Welcome back. Happy Friday. Nice to see you all again. Today, our main agenda item is to give each other feedback on the data stories you submitted for assignment 2. Your stories were really great again, so congrats. Nice job. Yeah, I think just in general, I really love the creativity you all put into this assignment, and I think you all made some really compelling stories. So why don't we just dive in? Who would like to go first in terms of talking about your story?
I had a quick question first.
Yeah.
I just realized I haven't been including the pictures separate from the videos. Would you like me to do that?
Let's see. I mean, if for your visuals are all like moving really, so I think it's okay. I think maybe that more applies if you have like snapshots and things like that. But yeah, I mean,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. The main point of that part of the assignment is to get you thinking about how are you laying out your story visually. So I think it's just helping you be guided through that process.
Yeah, I have them organized in the same folder, but what I use to upload, but I just missed the part where it said put it in one doc, but I'll do that next time.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think don't worry about it for the first 2 stories. Okay, so who wants to talk about your story first?
I can go.
All right.
So just a quick overview. Okay. Yeah, so my story is about sort of the future of where people are gonna live after COVID. And so it goes through a little bit of a over time story of how people started moving to the suburbs during the 20th century, and then sort of realizing that that wasn't the most sustainable way to organize the world, and then COVID happening and people kind of having to then go back on it and be like, I do want to sprawl out again, and sort of where are we going to end up. And the conclusion I come to is these little edge cities sort of that people during COVID have been fleeing to.
Yeah. So what sorry, just my iPad reconfigured. Yeah, what comments do people have for Kiara's story?
Something that really stood out to me this time around was the cadence of your voice. I thought it was super engaging, your tone and how you're speaking. Also the questions you pose in the beginning to draw us in. So yeah, your visual is great. Everything else is just pretty general, but that's what stood out to me the most.
Thank you.
Cool.
I really like the way that you led us through the whole story, how you took us through the logic of it. I think it was really effective. Yeah.
Thanks.
What about what did you all think about visual, how did the visuals work for you, and the data specific visuals? What did you think about those? How did they work for everyone?
I loved the visuals. I think the photos you chose were very thoughtfully chosen and aesthetically pleasing, and you also because you didn't have a lot of moving visuals, they were mostly just photos, you engaged the audience by saying stuff I wrote it down it looked like this, and then you draw their attention back to the photo. to like, and they were also like really interesting. The map visualizations were great too. The one thing that I thought could have like improved your story a little bit was adding some dramatic irony. Like you don't really talk about the climate change issue immediately. And I think that like you could kind of like mislead us into thinking like, oh, this is great. Like suburbs are great. Do you know what I mean? And then be like,
Yeah.
nope, climate change. That could make it like more of a, because I remember kind of feeling that way and then thinking like, oh, like one or two lines that like indicate that this is a positive thing and like lead me to believe that it's a positive thing, and then followed up by like, and there's this one consideration that not a lot of people think of in terms of climate change, could have made that effect stronger. But like even without,
Yeah.
that was like, I think a powerful moment in the thing or in the story. And yeah, I also had written down that you had a really good narrative voice. I thought that was, you're
Thank
quite
you.
good at telling stories like that.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good feedback because I wasn't really sure like how much I wanted to lean into the whole like back and forth because there are already a lot of like twists that I was doing. But yeah, I definitely agree. That's a good idea.
One thing I did notice was I think you were talking about like how like more compact cities would save like trillions of dollars of money, and you would just put like the number on the screen. I think that might have been like a little bit hard to conceptualize, just like a number that big, especially when you're thinking about money. So if you had like some sort of comparison, like this is how much blah 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 costs to compare, or like even like a little chart showing or like a graph, I don't know, that would have been effective, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea. I sort of struggled with what to do with that number because, as you said, like it is kind of hard to conceptualize. And I was like, I feel like a lot of the graphs, it's like kind of weird to just have one point or one bar. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. Like a comparison or something would have been cool.
I actually noticed that I think that's a great observation, Isha. And I noticed that in a few of your stories, actually. Some ideas for this. So, for this story in particular, I think like savings on that scale could be compared to like the GDPs of countries, or like, you know, like something historical, like is this increasing or decreasing over time, and what, yeah, I agree, it's hard to, or like, other budgets, maybe people think about like what's NASA's budget or the NIH budget, which is like, 1,000th of the scale, and but like that's what funds like all medical research, or almost all medical research in the country. Or like, if you could show like, okay, this is bigger than the GDPs of like the, bottom like 90% of countries, like that would be impressive too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, not for your story, but like I'm now blanking on whose story this was, but to talk about like population, like fractions of the population, one trick to do is like, something I've seen that's really effective is like you have kind of, you could have like a little icon to represent each person. And then if you want to represent like 1 out of 100, then it'd be like one person colored differently than all the rest. Or if it's like a proportion of a budget, you could have like, either you could have like squares or dots or rectangles, or like dollar bill visuals that are colored in, to show the proportions or things like that. You could have like stacks of money, or yeah, but that's a good observation. I loved your opening visual, like lights, the lights like visible from space. I thought that was such a cool way of showing like distribution of where people are. And it's like, it's a photo, but I think it was a photo at least.
Yeah, it was a
but
photo.
it was like, direct measurement, like, that was really cool. I agreed with others, like your narrative voice and style is, spot. It was a great match to your story. So I thought that was really nice. And I really like a lot of your map visualizations. I think my favorite one was your, you had like that graph showing like, big cities with arrows pointing to smaller cities. So like, the trend of moving to suburbs or smaller cities. That was a really effective way of visualizing that pattern. And then, yeah, like I also like choropleth maps. So you had one in there, and that was effective, I thought. There was one like I tried to find something to like recommend. I think overall it was so well done. It was actually hard to find something. The one line that I like came to is, so you have in your narrative, you come to a point where you say like, then COVID happens. That was super effective, first of all. That was like really attention grabbing for me. But then the line after it, you said like something like the thing, like what I've been advocating for or something like that. And I thought, I actually noticed this in a few of your stories, but yours was one. You had been using kind of a different voice up until that point in your story. So bringing your like the first person perspective into a story is a tricky business. So like you can, it's sometimes really effective. But like I think in this case, it kind of broke your objectivity for that one line. So like, I think if you had said something like, what we've been seeing so far, or like something that sounds more objective, because I think it kind of breaks the audience out of like facts receiving mode and puts them into like, okay, well, wait, now this is an opinion I'm receiving. And then that kind of transitions you to, do I agree with this opinion? Do I not? So opinions are things you can argue against. Facts are not, like, from a psychological perspective. And so even if you're presenting your facts in a way that is subjective, I mean, we always do this, and kind of that's the point. It's going to be more compelling if you're like, even if it's your opinion, if you're presenting it as like, what this leads us to is obviously like, we all have to draw conclusions, and that doesn't come directly from the data. So it's almost implied that's that what you're saying is your perspective. But I think you don't want to like temper what you're saying with, I think that, or I'm arguing that, because it can, like, people can, it's like a natural point for the audience to latch onto and then like disagree with, or like kind of filter out the full impact of what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, that's super good feedback. I didn't even really think about that when I was writing it, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, overall, like I thought this was a really awesome, like super well done, and like I liked your view to the future, like ending, and yeah, just like the whole thing was really great.
Thank you.
Any other comments or feedback?
Yeah, like I also like really like that last map of like the main city and then like the other local cities, and like how you kind of like took the direction of the story to like saying it's going to like go kind of like back to suburban and or more smaller cities. And I thought the carbon thing was interesting too.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, all right, great feedback. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Who would like to go next?
I can share.
Okay.
So I talked about DNA analysis as like a forensic tool and how it's been used as that, like from the perspective of the case of the Golden State Killer. Um, and then I kind of went on to talk about like what that, like how they found him using like consumer databases of DNA and what that means for like privacy implications and ethics implications. Um, yeah, that was my story.
Was this a real story?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Mm. Crazy.
I thought your visuals were great, like the data you used and like how you made the kind of STEMmy parts of it like consumable. I really liked that because it could have easily been like overly complex and like lose the audience a little bit.
Did you had one point where first of all, I totally agree about like those are great visuals. You had one point where it was like the sketch of the killer and then you faded into the killer. Was that like a filter or did you actually have a sketch or how did you do that? That's super cool.
I found like a sketch online and then I kind of edited a picture of like his mugshot.
Yeah,
Like,
that was super awesome. That was a really cool transition there.
thanks.
Yeah, I agree. And Lime, like what oh my gosh. What we were saying earlier about the icons, I liked when you were saying, so I wrote down, you were like, oh, it was like twice the amount or like 5 times as much, and you had like an icon and then like 5 icons. That was like, I thought, a really good way of visualizing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought the suspense was like really good throughout the whole thing too, and just like your narration. Um oh, and yeah, I just feel like yeah, it's a very like interesting like story, and it's crazy that like I guess people like the DNA is like out there and people can have like access to that.
Yeah, I thought it was a super cool like story choice. I had like vaguely heard of the Golden State Killer like DNA thing, but it was like really fun learning more about it. And like sort of the implications. And I like how you talked about like, in X amount of years, like 90% of like white people in America could be like traced and like all this stuff. I thought it would have been cool if there were stats on other races, like if that could, just because it stuck out to me since it was like just specifically white Americans. I was a little bit curious about sort of like what the data breakdown would be. But yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely, oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was just, you can go.
It was yeah, it was so informative. I feel like I learned so much I hadn't really heard except for Wednesday when you're talking about it a little bit. And so I don't know how or where this would happen, but there was so much information and I think it was just like the 5-minute time constraint, but it was like a little fast and I think like some pauses could help like absorb the information. Towards the middle, there were like some more pauses and it was like okay, like the info could be absorbed, but throughout, I don't know if it would be a thing where if you had more time, just slow the cadence, or if some of the details could be cut out, which is hard when it's a topic that a lot of us aren't educated on. It's like you need that background, but also, you know, need to be able to digest it to like really get the stories.
Yeah, that was something I really struggled with. I had like maybe like 10 minutes worth of information initially. So I was trying to like cut things out and speed it up so that it would fit. But yeah, I was curious if like anyone thought like there was information that I could have cut out to make more room for.
So you have yeah, I think it was a lot to cram in. I think I agree. It's an example of like what can you fit in a 5-minute thing. I think. Well, it sounded like you sped up the recording by like a small amount. I thought whatever, I couldn't tell like exactly what scaling factor you used. It's a good trick to use, but I think it was like one click too fast. I don't know. I get like when I'm used to like listening to recordings on like 2x speed, then I think it would have been fine, and like maybe that's what people do these days. But just try like hearing the other people, like everyone else's stories, and then like I listened to your story after hearing yours. Happened to be the last one I got to, and so I was like it was just a noticeable difference in speed. Yeah, I was trying to think about like, because what I wanted to write down is like, oh, you should have cut this part, and then um, that would be easy. I don't think there was any one piece that was like irrelevant. So it was all connected. I thought you had a really good like logical flow. It was a compelling story. Like, yeah, and as others have said, like visuals were awesome. And like really interesting points about privacy concerns. I did feel like it was a compelling story, so I'm hesitant to even recommend that you would like go in a different direction. But like, I found myself feeling a little jarred by starting with like, okay, we use DNA to get a killer, and then at the end, it was like, but do we want the lack of privacy? And it's like privacy is a thing of the past. And I get that those are the two sides of the argument, and so that makes it interesting. But then also, I guess like I was left wondering if there was a more direct way to foreshadow. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting narrative tool to like start in one direction and then throw a curveball at the end. But like, it's hard to. That can be great for like longer movies. It's hard to do it in a 5-minute thing because it's like really you got to stay focused on the main story, and then like you can maybe take one twist, but then if you go in too many tangents, it's like hard to I don't know. I thought your story was really effective, but in general, it's a risky thing to like take too many turns because it can make it confusing. But I thought actually, like, I didn't feel like it was super confusing for your story. So I don't know. Like, I think you pulled it off, but but I think it was a risky thing.
Yeah. I was like, I wanted to like add more of like the back and like give both sides of the argument at the end, but I just didn't have time. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Does anyone have any suggestions for what things could have been cut? Or
I don't have like a specific suggestion for things that we can be cut, like a specific part. I was trying to take notes, like, was that important? Like, could I have understood it without it? But what I would do, like, potentially is like reading through the script as if you were reading a novel or an article or something, and do like summary, like as if you were like as if this was the whole story, and then you had to just give someone a summary of. I know it's already kind of a summary, but I feel like it might be easier visually than like by listening, to like actually see like, okay, yeah, this can be said. These 3 sentences can be said, summed up in this one shorter sentence or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll try that in the future.
really like when I submit grant, like when you submit a grant application, you have to take your like, I mean, so like that's how labs are funded. When you like, often you start with this like unwieldy random assortment of like, hundreds of pages of documents, and then you have to distill it down to like either 6 or 10 or 15 or so pages. So it's like super condensed. And like, I mean, I think the analog of speeding up the film a little is like you play with the margins a tiny bit. Like if they have to be 1-inch margins, can you make them like 0.9 inches? Will they really notice? Can you make the font like, you know, a tiny bit more compressed, etc. But it still doesn't turn like 150 pages into 15 pages. So like what I end up doing there, and that it, like along the lines of what Amelia is suggesting, I think is like go through sentence by sentence and be like, is this the shortest possible way I could say this? And like, so I think that's kind of the level that you might be at with this story, because it's already so like it flows really well. There was no obvious like kind of stuff to cut out, but maybe just like line by line inspecting it could be useful.
Yeah, I'll definitely try that.
If anything, for me in terms of the content, and like I don't know if this is just like a me thing or something, but like maybe slightly less of like the details of the Golden State Killer. Like I know that's sort of like a big part of the story arc, but I feel like it ends up pretty much shifting to like more so talking about like the DNA stuff and privacy. And you probably spent like, I don't know exactly how long, but like a minute or so like explaining sort of like who the Golden State Killer was and stuff like that. It's like maybe you could have done it a little bit faster and people would just kind of get the gist and be like, okay, so he was like this horrible serial killer. And then like it might have saved you a little more time for like your like bulk of your argument.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for shortening things.
I think it added drama, like it was really effective also. So yeah, I think it's tricky. Yeah, but yeah, that could be a thing to explore. It's interesting. Okay, cool. Any other comments? Okay. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
All right.
Oh, mine basically ended up after a long process. Decided to talk about the like rise and more so the fall of movies with the advent of like streaming and then like especially COVID.
So what are some comments for Amelia?
I thought it was cool how you did the visuals like as though we were in a movie theater. And we could see like the curtains and the seats and stuff. And then your visuals were like on the screen. I thought that was a super cool way of like situating us within like the space that you're talking about. And like it's almost sort of like a nostalgic scene, which is, you know, partially the point. So I thought that was really effective.
Thanks. I'm not the most like savvy with design and tech and that kind of stuff, so it was like the least I could do to try to have some kind of element of the theater, because that was my goal to try to convey someone in the theater.
Yeah, how did you crop it like inside of it? Like what did you use for that?
I found I used Google Images and found like a picture of a screen. I did a couple trial and errors, and then found that one to be the best screen size, and then played a little bit with like contrast and stuff so that I could still have like the biggest screen, so it wasn't like super distracting by like the curtains and the chairs. So it was just like playing around with the different
That was really cool.
elements, and it looked fine enough.
I also liked in the beginning how like I thought it was really like grabbed my attention when you like named all of like the famous different shows and movies that like we all know and love, and that kind of like brought me in. It's like, oh, like I know the Avengers, like that's pretty sick.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes. No, please.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say the one thing I thought of that like because it was like so interesting and cool when it was in the theater and everything, and I thought of those ads. Do you know like the HBO ads where they're like they like kind of stitch together different clips from famous movies of people saying things to like make a point, if that makes sense. They're like, or what's the one where it's like no extra fees, but it's like the no is from like I don't know, like Matthew McConaughey and stuff like that. I thought that could have been
I've
really
never seen those. No, that sounds so cool though.
yeah, I thought that could be like a fun way to like make it dynamic. But it was totally unnecessary because it was like already pretty cool how you had edited it. And then I thought it was like really cool how the conclusion kind of like drew the whole story together for me, because it was like I don't really know where you're going with it, but your conclusion was so like beautifully written and well thought out that like I thought it was so interesting because it left the door open for like questions and like what do you want to see in the future, and like it kind of like put the whole story together, whereas like the beginning was saying like movie theaters are going to die soon, but that's not, I'm not saying we have to save them. I'm saying like, because I was like, where's she going with this? Like, are movie theaters not supposed to die? What's like, is this like an activism thing? Like, what's going on? But then I thought it,
Movie
the way you concluded it made it all like kind of make sense, and it was like a really memorable section of the video that I thought was awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
your last line was perfect. Like, what do you want to see and where do you want to see it? Like, it was like the double meaning of what do you want to see, and then yeah, that was great.
I'm a sucker for those kind of lines. The double meaning.
I think it worked super well. And it's also kind of like a movie closing thing, so it fit in that way too. So it fit the theme well. I also really liked the graphs on the big screen. I thought like it's hard to balance, like it can also get distracting. But overall, I thought it worked. But like it can look weird if it's like every visualization is like projected on the screen. That wasn't the case for your story, but like, you know, I think using those sorts of, I think the way you're using it was effective. Like, you know, setting the context and like putting people in the right mindset to digest the piece of information you want. But then, yeah, it's just like important to keep in mind a balance there where it's like you don't want to overplay the metaphor or the like, you know, because like there's also a cost to projecting like the graphs on the screen because then they're smaller. But yeah, I thought overall though it was a really creative idea. And then I thought your tone, like it was like very documentary style. I thought that worked really well for the like, you know, telling about movies. And then like great logical flow throughout, good data visualizations. You also, yours was one of the other movies where you brought in first person in like one part. Like you said, like, I'm not here to save the movies at like kind of near the end. I thought like up till that point, you were kind of, you know, also in like kind of fact sending mode. So you're like teaching the audience how things are and how they were and the history and all that. But then I think the danger with that wording, like I'm not here to save the movies, is like it injects the feeling that you have an agenda into that line, and so that can like diminish your kind of trustworthiness or believability, and like also it's like inviting skepticism, or it can invite skepticism. So like
Yeah, how else could I convey that like I'm not like a movie activist? Like could I reshape that line to be more objective, like movies don't have to be in the future, or like along those kind of lines of keeping it in the third person?
like you could say like, are movies, like you could frame it as a question, like are movies a relic of the past that like kind of the industry is evolving out of, or are they still like an important way of like, you know, like communicating this art form or something like that? So like it's like I mean you're kind of getting the same point across there, but it removes your opinion from the say. It's not always bad to say what your opinion is. Like it can be really effective, but it just it's hard when you're like breaking the theme.
Yeah.
Like, so I think I think that's worth like noticing distinction, because like if your story is about your opinion about something, then like then it's your opinion, and like you kind of, then you're kind of, the audience is set up to expect that. But if you're setting it up like here are some facts, then you don't want to, well, it can just be jarring to like then have, okay, wait, is it actually facts, or should I be skeptical? Or not that you were saying
Okay.
anything particularly controversial, but like,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. Overall, though, super well. Yeah. I mean, all of yours were really well done, and yours just too, Amelia.
Appreciate that. Also, sorry, my Wi-Fi is like spotting out, so I'm just trying to walk around my room I'm holding my get better. But if my video turns off, that's just because I'm trying to.
It'd be a fun Zoom background, like tours of different parts of the world as you time lapse. Yeah. Hannah, did you have a comment? I saw you unmuted yourself. I don't know if you wanted to add something. No. Okay. Okay. Any other feedback? All right. Okay. Who would? Let's see. So I think Nathan and Hannah, you're the.
I can go.
Okay.
My story was about Snapchat filters and like a make-believe study. And yeah, I talked about the pros a little bit, and like more so focusing on the effects on self-image that Snapchat filters can have. One of the things I like really wanted feedback on was the music, because I felt like it made it kind of lively and fun, but might have also like, you don't really have music in the background of a story very often. I thought about that after. So like maybe it took away from the narrative piece. So yeah, if anyone has any thoughts on that, that's something that was kind of a little bit risky on my part, and I'm curious how it landed.
Music stuck out to me in a really positive way. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, like I wonder if I should put music. So I think we probably had like opposite thoughts about that. But yeah, I thought it like made it feel sort of like a mini documentary, or like it just felt like it had this like professional like kind of editing quality that was also like supplemented by all the cool stuff you did with like the Snapchat filters going back and forth, which I also really appreciated. Yeah, I felt like the editing overall was really cool, and like it was, in my opinion, a good risk.
Yeah, I had also like specifically written down that I liked the background music. I felt like it made it seem like even more social media-y. I thought it was a great choice.
The music was actually taken from the background of a Snapchat ad. So like it was like I thought it fit kind of well. That's why, I don't know. I thought it would match the vibe a little bit.
I think because it was just instrumental, it didn't really take anything away from the actual narrative. And did you like go in and out of it? When you were okay, yeah. I thought that was effective as well. In making sure like your words were heard.
Thank you.
I think like, yeah, I also liked it. I think the and your video editing was really fantastic. It just, the whole thing, and just like great visuals throughout, and like lots of movement, which I thought worked really well for the story. I think I in general like the music. The one piece of awkwardness that point of awkwardness that I noticed was like, you would in a few sections you had like background music, which I thought was like engaging and like kept up the excitement. And then you like had a sharp cut to the next segment you were saying, and then suddenly the music cut out, and then it was just you with no music. And so like, I know it's like
Was that right when I started to talk about the study more?
possibly.
Because I think like looking back that watching my video, like the most critical thing that I could say is that like the study part seems boring and like out of context a little bit. And I think maybe adding music in the background there or like working in and out in a smoother way could have like kept up engagement in that portion. So that's interesting.
So I actually noted like I did a radio interview a few months ago, and like I was listening to it, like they sent me the final version, and I was like it starts out and it's all like the exciting theme music, and then like I think I monologued for too long, and they like the music ran out, and so then it was just like me talking with no music, and it just felt like I was wasting the listener's time. And so I think you kind of have to, if you have, sorry, got running around. Oh. Running around naked kids here. Okay, interesting. So, good Lord. Okay. Yes, if you, okay. If you, I have no idea. Oh, music. If you like go in with like emphasizing some parts with music, it kind of sets up an expectation of like how you're processing the story, and it kind of you kind of get equilibrated to it, and it like you kind of start to filter out the sound, and that becomes the new normal, listening to that background. And so when it disappears, that can be a signal that you notice. Whereas if you don't have music from the beginning, like you're kind of not expecting it, and so the absence of music is just like how that story is. So when you like cut in and out different things, like it can feel jarring. Like it's also why, like, if you watch news segments where you have like a video clip and then they show a still image, often editors will add in like movement to the picture by like zooming in slowly or panning out slowly, and then it doesn't feel quite so jarring, like you're like moving super fast and then suddenly static. But I think the same thing happens with sound.
I also like, yeah, I thought the editing was like crazy good and like seemed like it could be like like a professional video. But then yeah, at the end too, like specifically like when like you were typing out, like you don't need to like use a filter to be beautiful or something like that. Like I thought that was just a cool like idea that you had to like take like a screen recording of you typing it out. It was like, and yeah, all the timing of like the music and like when the music got louder or quieter was like, it's like good. Like when your voice came in, yeah, overall just pretty cool. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also really liked that ending. Related to the experiment piece, I think there are a few suggestions that I had. So one aspect of it that I thought could be kind of tweaked a little is it felt a little too jargony at times. I know that's something you worked on from Wednesday to here, but so like a couple examples are like you said at one point, like this could be attributed to a generational difference. So that phrasing is a little jargony, but one way to, oh my God, sorry. Sorry. this is the new reality. Okay. I thought it could have been effective to kind of set up the mystery a little more. So like, maybe unpack the explanation. So you could say like, this factor also influences self-esteem, and we know it changes with age. So like, how can we tease apart how much of a hit to self-esteem is driven by like that age-related thing versus augmented reality or something like that? So kind of frame it as a question instead of, is it
Yeah.
a generational effect?
That's interesting. I feel like watching everyone else's, I felt like I kind of misunderstood the assignment and thought that the like data portion and like the methods portion was way more important than it was. So yeah, I agree with that. I think watching everyone else's, I was like, oh, you can actually get this point across, and like we don't need to like, yeah, it's not a paper.
Yeah, well, I think the key is like, it's not a paper. I don't think you misunderstood the assignment. You did an awesome job with it. I think, and like in general, I thought your like visualizations felt really seamless. So that was good. I think specifically when you were describing, it was really only some parts of the experiment. Like you framed it as like, this is an experiment that was done. So you kind of described it in the past tense. And I thought that was really effective. But just like, really, I think the place I saw that for like, with kind of room for tweaking was like when you, with the jargon stuff. Another point was like, you were talking about like researchers looking for a dose dependent effect. That like dose dependence, that's, I think, or for me, it was too jargony. I think another way of framing that section, so you could have either like, I think in the line after that, you said something like, does each additional year like have a negative impact or something like that? You could have just started with that line. And then like in that same section, you have like a bar graph showing strength of effect on the y-axis, but it's like hard to remember what the effect is at that point in the story. And so like, maybe relabeling to like, something like influence on self-esteem. I forget what direction the effect went in, but something that can be easily digested and like serve as its own reminder might have helped as the visual. And then I thought like just one idea was you could have reworded that section to kind of just be more colloquial overall. So like, something like, does augmented reality's hit to self-esteem build up over time? Well, then, if so, people who start using augmented reality earlier in their lives could be at greater risk of having low self-esteem. And then like you show this graph and then they either do or they don't. And then that kind of drives your story forward.
That's helpful.
But cool. Yeah, so just like, I think this is part of like, you want to set up the, okay, what are the facts and what's the mystery? And you want the mystery to be interesting. And then like, yeah, it's tricky when you're like doing the data analysis yourself, because you think like, I think there's a tendency of many people, including me, definitely, to like, you watch a segment or you read a paper and it's like, okay, you kind of digest it as that's the facts. But when you're doing the analysis yourself, you know all the weak points of your argument. And so then you start to, like the dangers, you start to like inject in like your own skepticism and your own like knowledge about the flaws of how you've studied or set things up. But it's good to be honest about what you did and didn't find. And so like you want to paint an accurate picture, of, particularly of consequential things, but it can strengthen your argument if you like set up the limitations as mysteries for further exploration. And like, why is this a mystery? And can I give the, like you want to leave the audience with the impression, okay, well, I like made a reasonable attempt, and given the limitations of like what's known now or current technology or whatever, how, like, this is a, you want to like give the impression this was a logical place to start looking at this problem, but then like it didn't fully solve it because there are these extra, like, here's some questions that were raised by the study that we wouldn't have known before if we hadn't run this, or here's some other ways I could have approached this problem, you know, something like that. So
Okay, thank you so much.
I just wanted to say that even though sorry, I thought I heard something. Even though maybe you didn't necessarily need to like talk about like study design and all that, like given that you did, I think you did like a really good job of like still having it be like a story video and not so like it wasn't dry or anything like I typically think of like when reading a study. So I still think you did like a really good job of like the balance there. And another point I wanted to say was I loved your graph. I forget exactly what it's called, but like the bar and whisker, or I don't know, when you have the little bar and then there's the error bars. And I loved how you used like the pictures. Oh, I don't know if I'm frozen or not. I'm frozen on my screen. Um, but how you had the pictures be the box plot. I thought that was really effective because it reminded us like which ones you were comparing visually. So wanted to say that.
Thank you. I tried to like add little fun elements to the data analysis to make it less dry.
yeah, I think you really succeeded there, and like the whole thing was just, it was felt very engaging and compelling, and yeah, you did a great job with it. And it is hard to present a study and not have it seem dry, but I think you did a great job of tying it into like, okay, it feels relevant and exciting, and yeah, so really nice job.
Thank you.
All right, any other feedback before we move on to Nathan's story? All right. All right, Nathan, you are up. So food allergies.
Yeah. So my story is basically starts, or yeah, basically just about like a news report of this kid who is at school and gets like an allergic reaction. The teacher doesn't take like the necessary steps like that you should take when something like this happens, and he ends up like having like a near death experience, but miraculously like survives. And then it's kind of like an education kind of uh opportunity at the end that the news like reporter just tries to like help other like teachers or people in a similar situation like understand what they should do next time.
Cool. So what feedback do people have?
Something I really liked, I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but I loved how you started like with the newscast. Were you wearing a suit or something like dressy on top, and so it seemed very official. And then you went to these like drawn little graphs that definitely like don't seem very credible. And I don't know, I thought that had like a comedic element to it, that it was like super official, but then it was these little drawn graphs. But then another on top of that, because then you go into like a school, and I don't know, I got the idea that Billy was like a little kid. It also seemed like, you know, it was like a little kid who drew the graph, and like we were in school with him. So I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but that's the effect I got, and I really liked that. I thought that was effective.
I appreciate that. I didn't really have intended like the effects initially. It was just because like I couldn't find a graph like that, so I had to like draw it out. But thank you.
I thought that was a really creative way of like, we haven't really learned how to do dynamic data visualization, and like recognizing that that's what you wanted in that moment was like the ability to draw the line and then to just do it like that. I thought that was like kind of creative to like solve that little barrier between what you wanted to do and like the tools you had.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was super clever, and I like just appreciated that you really committed to like the bit, like Amelia was saying with like, but you were wearing the clothes and you had the background. You're like, oh, Channel 8 News. Like, I thought that was, you know, like lightheartedly a little bit funny because we know you and obviously you're not a newscaster, but then also in like a realer sense, like it did feel like a little more sort of newsy. And then when it's the voiceover of you showing like the videos of the children, like I feel like I've seen that exact video on like every news story like ever in a school. So I definitely was like, yep, this feels like the news. Like it was really well done.
You probably have. I literally just like looked up like kids on the news at school.
Um, okay, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, I thought also it was like a really fun intro, news segment. I thought the theme was really creative. I also like the transition to like the bar graph sketch. One data visualization tip for that sketch is I thought like instead of coloring the two bars that you're comparing blue, I thought something like this graph, like kind of the line drawn between the two bars you're comparing can sometimes be effective. So, if you had many bars, like that's just two bars in that example, but if you had like, many bars, then drawing that sort of shape between the bars you're comparing can help you highlight that difference. But yeah, something to think about. I think, and then related to like, does one number display kind of convey sufficient information? I think other places that I saw as like had potential for like additional visualizations where when you showed like the proportions of people with different allergies, I thought like, I know I advised you not to use pie charts. You could have used a pie chart there, or a ring graph could have been effective. So here's what they look like. At least one of you used a ring graph in your, Isha, was it you? Or yeah, okay, you're nodding. Yeah, so that could be useful. Just to give people a sense of the different proportions. And then you had like 50% of people at some point. I forget what the context was, but I thought, that could be a bar graph or like a visualization where like you had like icons of 100 people and then 50 of that, 50 out of the 100 were colored in some way or something like that, to help kind of give weight to that number.
Yeah, I was like thinking about that for the 50%, and then I considered it, but I was like, it might be simpler, like if they like just saw like, I don't know, but I guess maybe for this class or just in general, like it's better to try to see like different ways you can create data visualizations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we'll definitely continue to explore. Another thing I noticed, so I really liked your tone throughout in each of individual section was good. I think it wasn't totally cohesive in terms of how the whole thing flowed. So when you were in newscaster mode in the beginning, I thought you had the perfect, like very serious kind of matter of fact, you did a good job with the newscaster role. But then like when you started talking about the Billy, and then that worked when you were talking about food allergies in general. Mm-hmm. And then when you went into the Billy story, I thought like it was a really promising direction, but there were some aspects that I felt like could use a little tweaking. So one thing was like the style and the tone of the story about Billy didn't totally fit with the news broadcast style. So like, I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but like you had dialogue about like you kind of told it as a standalone story with like dialogue between the teacher and Billy, and it's not totally how news stories are typically told. So it kind of felt like it was a separate story spliced into this news segment.
Yeah, I understand like what you're saying. I did think about that. I guess like if you've ever seen like the Inside Edition, like news things on like YouTube, like they do like a lot of storytelling and it kind of like I had like this, I don't know if you like heard, but like the switching noise of like between like one part. So like I like tried to like make it a little like make it known a little bit that I was like kind of switching up the pace a little bit, but yeah, like I definitely think like it'd be interesting to see like if it would have had a better impact if I just stuck to the news style the whole time.
Well, I think switching in a story, like a segment on an individual example, I think that works for news segments, and that works with your theme. But I just thought like the style of your like newscaster mode was spot on, and then the style of the storytelling of Billy, like as a sub segment, was great. But they weren't 100% compatible with each other in terms of like, I just like, I mean, obviously this is a made up story and all that, so like there is no right answer here. But like my impression was like, oh, that's not how a newscaster would tell this story about Billy. It just like thematically didn't 100% match up.
That's totally fair.
I think like the newscaster part was like, I thought that was like very unique and like caught my attention. And I also really liked the story part. I think there could have been like, I like don't want you to change either of them. And I think you could have made like very like added one line where you kind of like made like some sort of comedic statement where you switched modes, where you're like, you went from like straight newscaster, like really exactly what you'd expect, to be like, now I'm going to tell a story or something like that, where like it was like purposeful that you switched modes. Because yeah, I felt like if you were trying to still be a newscaster, then that didn't make sense. But it became clear that you weren't like still trying to be like that like clean cut guy with a suit on in the beginning. You were like telling a less formal story when you got through it and you started to do like the dialogue and stuff. So I thought that was like, I don't want you to like change it, but I do think that like one little line where you like almost made fun of yourself for switching. Do you know what I mean? Or like made it like a part of the video, or like an unexpected twist would be like, I don't know, like
Yeah, I see what you're saying too. Like that would be funny. Like I just like had the idea too. Like, do you think it would possibly work if I was like doing the news report and then like pointed to like a screen and said like all right, like let's take a look at what happened and then like press play on that and then like it started showing like a story and like maybe it was a different voice than me telling the story too. I don't
yeah,
know.
something like that. I think any sort of like now
Yeah.
we're switching modes moment, which could be like super simple, would like improve that little moment of, okay, now we're switching modes, you know, because it's like up to the audience right now to like figure that out. But like you could clarify it in a way that like makes it seem like you're still in the driver's seat of telling your own story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would work better. Thank you.
But like the two parts were like awesome, and I'm glad you did them both. It's like a tricky, I think it was like a tricky balance trying to do both, but I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
You also had at the end you had some great take home messages with like practical advice and conclusions. I thought those were great. But I also felt like they didn't 100% fit with the like news broadcast style. So one possible direction I thought of to tweak that section would be like, you could frame it as like, what can you do to keep your family safe? And then like, have some reference, like experts say that, and then like, give the advice from that perspective instead of, and I'm now blanking on the precise wording used, but let's see. I can pull it up. Let's see. So, yeah, like, so you say like there are many lessons to be learned here and many mistakes we want to point out that the teacher specifically has made. So like newscasters tend to give the appearance of objectivity. So in other words, like you're trying, well, I mean, it's similar to the role of a narrator in a documentary. Like you're presenting the facts, you're not injecting, like your role isn't to inject your opinion. It seemed like with the lessons learned, it's like you're giving advice, but a newscaster doesn't have authority as themselves. They have, like, their authority is, I can invite experts to talk about what they know. So they're kind of a, I mean, the role of the media is like a mediator between the interesting stuff that's happening and the like public. So like, but the media itself as an entity and members of the media do not themselves have authority to provide the information. So if you're play acting the like, I'm a newscaster, then you don't have authority by yourself. It's your experts that have authority, and you can like show it, like your camera might have authority if you're videotaping a scene unfolding. So so I like that idea of like, okay, we're going live to this scene that's unfolding in a school where someone's just had, ate a peanut butter cookie and they're allergic to peanuts. What's going to happen? Yeah. Anyways, just worth thinking about maybe.
Yeah. I think if I stuck with the news thing, like I would, say at the end, like instead of that, I would say just like, and after speaking to like scientists or not scientists, like after speaking to doctors and allergists, we've learned like that there are a couple important messages that we can share with you or something like that. And then I don't know, I could like just scratch the whole news reporting thing too and just tell this story like starting with him, because like I just kind of added it in because I thought it would be kind of cool. But I'm happy to like just taking out like the beginning part and just starting off with the story and then making it like an education kind of thing. I don't know.
I thought it was a creative direction. Like I thought it was like a, somewhat riskier format, but I thought it worked well. And like, I mean, I think it's good to try out different narrative styles and, see what works and what doesn't work. And like, that's the goal of these assignments. So, I would encourage you to keep exploring there, and then but like, I think that maybe the takeaway, one takeaway is like, if you're going with a style, then really own it and like go all in, and then like, take it forward. And I think that can be more compelling than it's like, if you're switching styles partway through, you're not totally sure. It can like, that inconsistency or uncertainty can be latched onto and like kind of it saps your authority, your storytelling authority. So you have to kind of guard that carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we're out of time. Thank you, everyone. Glad we got to everyone. You all did a really awesome job with this. Next week, we're going to be taking a temporary detour away from storytelling by starting to learn how to program in Python. So if you've never programmed before, next week may be a lot. I'd recommend, has anyone programmed before? Okay, a few of you, about a little over half. Okay, so I would recommend that you check out module 3 before Monday, so that Monday isn't the first time you're seeing the stuff. And like, what I've found is learning to program works best when there are lots of like hands-on demos, when you can actually practice with stuff. And so the the way I've set things up is on Monday, we're going to do kind of a more structured class where I'll, basically reinforce what I think of as the most important stuff from module 3. So it might be redundant for some of you and incomprehensibly new for others. But the goal is to get people on the same page. And then on Wednesday and Friday next week, we're going to do kind of a more free-form thing where it'll be open time to like go over questions and like code up examples as a class and that sort of thing. We can even do like breakout room demos if people want. But so my goal is to like have everyone get some of the programming basics down by the end of next week, which is a quick onboarding. But we've mostly been able to do it in past years, so we'll see how it goes this time. And then the following week, we're gonna like build up your data science toolkit, and then you'll be able to start like actually using Python to analyze real data sets and like make the sorts of visualizations that we've been talking about and sketching out so far. Okay, so that's a little preview. All right, well, have a good weekend, everyone, and see you Monday.